Hello there. So let's talk about the 2023 Honda Civic Type R record lap of the Nürburgring. So it might be that they cheated. There's, supposedly they might have used a different sixth gear and increased the boost. For analysis into that, I would recommend you look into this cool video by Misha Sherode. No need for me to go into that. But other than that, if you look into there's this also this article about the changes that Honda made to the record-setting car, where so it's not mentioned here, but I think the most important part is that they use the Pilot Sport Cup 2 tires, which are not actually fitted, so they're not available to the standard Type R, maybe not even to the Type R S grade, which would be the name of the record-setting specification. So you have to buy that you have to buy that tire straight through Michelin. So that's interesting. It's like previously the cars which would get tested should at least be available in the configuration in which they set the record laps. So yeah, Honda's kind of sidestepped that, but yeah, they don't get hate from me because this type of shenanigans has kind of always happened. But if you look, the record-setting car also got rid of the air conditioning, which from having had a track car without air conditioning, I can tell you is quite annoying. But yeah, it does save, I don't know, like 20 kilos from the front of the car. Tonneau cover, that's nothing. Parking sensors, yeah, a little bit. Cargo net hooks, auditing rear view mirror, visor lights, navigation hardware. So that might save a little bit of weight. But yeah, it's clear Honda basically made the car as light as possible, fitted the stickiest available tires that you can get, and then went for it. So the reason I don't really I don't mind that too much, because the going for Nürburgring Nordschleife record laps has always involved some shenanigans. If you look at the previous record holder, the Renault RS Megane Trophy R, that was also a little bit of a cheater model, in the sense that, okay, although you can buy that, you can buy the car in exactly the same spec as it was used for the record-setting run. It was a 72,000 pound version of a car that's normally, less than 30,000 euros or so, from what I recall, or okay, maybe a little bit more. But anyway, it was more than double the cost of the normal Renault Sport Megane. So I think it was like carbon fiber body panels and all kinds of stuff like this. So yeah, I think Honda also gets a pass there. If we look at the video, so I will say that they did a much better job than the previous video. So the previous video from 2017, at the time I was like, oh, come on, you put all this effort into breaking the lap record, and then you forget to set the settings of the GoPro properly. Just look at I think it was in sections like this, you can't see anything. So that video from 2017 was just terrible. And I must give credit where credit's due, because they've done a much better job this time. And the one thing which really caught my attention was this thing in the middle. So not the G meter. That you see in a lot of videos. What I was very impressed by was the graphic showing the amount of grip available from each tire. and how that was being used by the driver throughout the lap. That is very cool. I have never seen that in another similar video before, and is actually kind of similar. It's quite similar to some of the graphics that I kind of or animations that I made by hand for the vehicle dynamics course that I created for race car setup. When I was looking at this, the thing that I was thinking of was, well, how do you actually create the data to feed the visualization? Because the force at the contact patch is actually not something that is measured unless you have like a quarter car test rig or something like that, where you can put so a quarter car test rig is what car companies during suspension development might use as a test facility. So it's like literally 1/4 of the car, one single tire, 1/4 of the sprung mass. You have, one spring, one damper, and that corner suspension there, and you're able to do, say, suspension control algorithm development on it, and you're looking into things like the amount of comfort in terms of body accelerations at the sprung mass, and by having a load cell underneath the contact patch, you can actually measure the amount of tire force variation, which is good approximation for the amount of grip the tire would be able to generate laterally and longitudinally. But in an actual vehicle, you cannot measure that because there's literally, it's just the tire on the road surface. So how do you generate graphics like this? And if you look at if you look at the vehicle bouncing over the curbs, you can see the dynamic changes in the tire tire force in the visualization. So when I saw that, I was like, oh wow, that's really cool. How did they do that? Did they actually like measure the tire forces somehow, or was that just somehow through simulations? But actually, the way I would do it, and the easiest way I would use to do that would probably be to use the ride height signal. So I could imagine that a car like the Honda Civic Type R has ride height sensors at each corner. So these are little these are little sensors that measure the angle of a little mechanism like this. So what you're seeing here, this is a suspension arm. As it moves up and down, it'll move this little lever and move this little arm through an angle here, and what the sensor is doing is just measuring the angle of this little arm. And car manufacturers would typically sweep through the ride height and have a little table which maps the ride height at a particular corner to the angle of that sensor. So from that you can tell and that sensor is then used to feed into control algorithms for suspension control, for end stop mitigation and things like that. So that would be what I would use to feed the feed that visualization. So the more the suspension goes in compression, the higher the forces on the tire would be, and the larger that circle would become. And the only thing that you would be missing, so the simplification is just missing the forces from the damper, which are quite high frequency and in nature, and also the inertial forces from the unsprung mass oscillating up and down. But I think that's okay because the tire slip angle is more sensitive to the low frequency load on the tire rather than the high frequency inputs, or at least from the driver's point of view, what is a lot more apparent are the lower frequency tire load variations than the high frequency variations. So the high frequency tire load variation will reduce the amount of grip and also increase the slip angle, but it's the low frequency tire load variations between the front and rear axles which are then causing the driver to have to make course corrections. The only other possible way to get this data would have been perhaps to use the TPMS sensor, so the tire pressure monitoring system. However, I don't believe that would be the better choice because of the fact that there is not a one-to-one straight up conversion between the tire pressure and the load at the contact patch. There is actually a significant portion of the tire stiffness that is coming from the tire carcass, and so I don't believe the TPMS sensor was used for this visualization, because the TPMS sensor would have much higher, would have a lot more noise than the height sensor, and I think for purposes of this visualization, the height sensor would probably be perfect. So if we look at this in a little bit more detail, so as mentioned, the size of that yellow circle is showing the capacity of the tire, of that particular tire, to generate horizontal forces. And from the visualization, you can actually see what the driver is doing in terms of utilization of that grip potential from each tire, basically. And that is pretty cool, because if you think about it, it means that if you have this data, you can use it to help the driver inform herself or himself in terms of how to better utilize the grip of the vehicle to get a better lap time. And I would imagine, because it's via the height sensor, as the vehicle goes, say if the vehicle has some lift at high speed, the vehicle body would lift up, and that would be reflected in a reduced size of the circle. Similarly, imagine the vehicle going through a compression, a bit like, say, dip through Eau Rouge, and also there's a bunch of such compressions in this on the Nürburgring, of course, say through Vauxhall. The suspension will be compressed, the vertical tire load would increase, and that's the size of the circles would also increase. So the visualization is good for helping the driver understand where they might be able to make up more time, and it's also just cool to let me slow down the video. And it's also possible to look at the different phases of a corner in theory. Fast forward a little bit. So here you see, tires going straight. It's the front tires which are providing traction, and therefore the dots are slightly in front of the line. They're hardly generating any braking forces, cornering forces, and so it's pretty close to to the middle. The tires are relatively evenly loaded, but the left side is slightly more loaded because there's like a slight kink to the right. But this will change quite dramatically as the driver applies the brakes. The load transfer happens to the front, and you can see that the driver is almost maximizing the longitudinal grip. Small amount of, a small amount of additional braking might have been possible. And so the driver is about to turn in. So at this point, the front right has a lot more lateral or horizontal grip generating capability than the rear right, which is what you need to initiate the yaw rotation. Driver turns in. He's got more. He had more corner capability from the front, so now he's starting to get some oversteer. And you see he's counter steering, and we'll apply some throttle to. And as the driver applies throttle and shifts some weight backwards, the front tire, the overall size of or capability of the front tire to generate grip has decreased. Plus, by applying throttle, the driver is collapsing the lateral grip generating capability of the tire and fixes the oversteer. So if we see that again, oversteer happens, shifts some load to the rear, reduces the front, reduces the amount of grip the front tire is generating through applying throttle, and fixes it. Yeah, so I thought this was really cool to have this graphic. I hope more car companies start using this graphic. I do wonder whether this Honda Log R or Logger, whether like owners of the Honda Civic Type R actually have access to these visualizations, because that would be really cool. If you own a Honda Civic Type R and have access to the logger, please let me know in the comments whether you actually have access to this, and if you don't, let me know what you think about how they generated these graphics, and whether you think they're useful. Cool. Well, wish you a great weekend. Hope it was interesting. Till next time.